Hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We shift to Canada on episode 38. Master Grant Smith chats with Chris Gregory of Eco-Pools and discusses poured-in-place projects. Stay tuned as we figure out what the weather's like up in Canada. You do not want to miss the next lifestyle event with Ask the Masters on February 27th and 28th. We are being hosted by Bazaza Tile, Laticrete, and Wet Edge, and we're going to get dirty. We're actually going to install paper-faced Bazaza Tile with the backdrop of Laticrete, all at the Wet Edge facility. Enjoy.
Hi, we're here with Ask the Masters, and this is Grant Smith with Alkaline Pools and Spas. I'm here with Chris Gregory from Eco-Pools from Toronto, Canada. Chris, thanks for coming in today.
Hey, no problem, buddy. Nice to talk to you again.
Hey. Yeah, awesome. Hey, I look forward to seeing you every year at the big show at the International Pool Spa Patio because I think I've known you now for about 5 or 6 years. Kind of tell me about. I know you've told me about some of the things you've done in the past, but kind of tell me how you got started in the business and where you got started and where you're at right now.
Well, excuse me. I guess it was. Well, I got started in the business back in '88. It was with a company just north of Toronto in Aurora called Lifestyle Pools. Back then, I was pretty green. I was about 20 years old. Didn't know anything about pools, and just kind of fell into it. A friend of mine it got me into the job. He knew my sister. He worked with my sister, so he said, "Hey, they're looking for some guys for laborers in a pool company. Looking, are you interested?" And so I went down, applied, got the job, started the following Monday. This was a Friday, and ever since then, I've been a pool guy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you fell into the business like a lot of us do, just looking for work or just can't figure out what they want to do, and you know somebody who knew somebody, and that's how you got into the business. So I know you've built some pools down in Australia. Tell me, how long were you there, and what was that like to build like in Australia? I know you're in Canada, right now, but what was Australia like?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, I highly recommend it to anybody if they even want to just take a trip. People are great down there. I did it as I initially went down just as a just one of those working holiday type things. I was 24. This is going back in '92. So I thought, you know what? It was January of '92. I hopped on a plane. Just went down. Wasn't planning on staying more than probably 3 to 6 months, and I ended up meeting a girl. Fourth day I was over there. And,
of course.
Met her at Manly Beach, and then we just kind of hung together, and we stayed together for about 3.5 years. We were going to get married. That didn't happen, but I stayed on for another, I guess, just over 2 years after that. So I was down there from '92 to '98.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Great time. We traveled a lot with the company that I was working with. We were kind of traveling all over, putting in pools. We did commercial, residential. They were getting into a lot of the edge detail back then. They had some different methods of doing it back then. So we did a lot of manufacturing in the factory and on site. We also put in liner pools, commercial grade and residential. We did a lot of edge detail, and that was both residential and commercial.
Gotcha. Now the edge details. How what years were those? Was it 97, 98, and were they like perimeter overflow edge details, or just negative edge, or just one-sided edge?
A lot of perimeter overflow. They did a lot of wet decks for the commercial side. We put in pools for Olympics, like the Olympics. We did a lot of 25-meter type pools. Our tolerances back then were, from end to end, were about a 1 millimeter. Your tolerances were from end to end. So it was, plus you had a 20 millimeter thick touch pad that you had to incorporate with that length. But they were perimeter overflows. We did a two-sided balance. Well, it wasn't a balance tank. We'd have a balance tank, but we also did a two-sided trough. and then we incorporated a coping stone that went on top that also had a grate system in the middle of it. So we leveled those with stainless steel threaded rod up and down, and sealed the joints with polyurethane and underneath, and then had all our pipe sizing done. Engineers did all that back then. Had no clue about pipes or flow rates or anything like that. So so it was all engineered out, and they went in pretty good. They went in pretty slick. Even our water stops back then, we used a lot of what we use today, like hydrotight water stops for in between the joints, T joints, and that kind of thing. And then we just.
Now, did you guys do a lot of did you guys do a lot of more shotcrete, or was it the cast in place like you're doing now?
It back then it was more like, if it was just a backyard pool, it was more shotcrete, and the pools back then, you'd be looking at like a 12-24 type thing. They weren't very big, 4 or 5 feet. Average depth was probably about 5 feet in the center.
Right.
Steel, everything like that. Pebble Tech. Actually, they were the original, not installers, but they originated Pebble Tech back then. We called it Pebblecrete back then. You also used it on decks, but in the pool and that kind of thing.
Right.
And that was pretty much back then. That was kind of the go-to finish as far as your backyard pool went.
Right. Didn't you guys also start the, you did a lot of salt before in Australia, then before you got over here to the States? Yeah,
they came out with the salt systems back then. I think it was, I'm trying to think of the name, it begins with an M. They came out, they started salt systems back then in about 72. And and then it kind of, I know in Canada, I know it came over in the States quite earlier, but in Canada, it kind of arrived here about 98, I think, 99, was starting to get used, and is used quite a bit even today. I mean, you still have a lot of manufacturers out there, a lot of companies out there that are still installing it. People recommend it, even though there is a lot of different sanitizers that we use in the pools today. But it's still quite an ongoing thing, especially with the vinyl liner pools here. People like to incorporate that.
Yeah. Well, kind of getting back to Canada now. Do you guys do more vinyl liner pools up there, or do you do concrete? Down here, at least on the West Coast and Texas and Florida, shotcrete is king. But what about up there in Canada? Is it more vinyl liner or the other way around?
It's I'd say middle of the road is vinyl liner, definitely. Your average backyard pool, cost-wise, you're probably around the 60 mark, 50, 60 mark. That's kind of average for a vinyl liner pool. Then you've got, all the other stuff on top of it, landscaping and that kind of thing. Definitely, concrete is more the upper crust. Now you're into, 120 up kind of thing. And then with edge detail and that kind of thing, then you're into, into the hundreds of thousands kind of thing. So we try and incorporate, with the cast in place, we try and incorporate bunkers, that kind of thing. If it's going to be an edge detail type thing, we like to incorporate a bunker with it if we can. And then part of that bunker is your lid and your decking on top.
Let's kind of get into that. That's one reason why, we got you on today, because, we know each other, and I follow you on Instagram, and some of the jobs you do are just, to me, for someone in Southern California, we do some crazy stuff here, but, when I see you out there excavating an entire backyard down like 6 feet, it definitely looks like an enormous job to do. So kind of explain how, what you do as far as cast in place, and, how let's just kind of start with the process. What do you do normally? Like when you first get into the backyard and you're doing one of those bunkers and you got to move dirt, what's the first step in the process in that?
Well, first step is basically your base slab. Once you get the excavation out, we put in a base slab. Nice part about that is it's nice and flat. We incorporate all our plumbing in that we need in that base slab. With a bunker, it's like building a basement. We do we do a foundation, like we do a base slab. We put in our sump pits, that kind of stuff. So you're going to be irrigating around that whole structure. And then we work up from there. Our concrete walls form up from the base slab. If there's any engineering underneath, if there's any support, then that can be incorporated into the base slab, and then we just basically work our walls up from there.
Right.
Pool walls. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to go back to the sump pits. Are those sump pits like in the equipment area, or do you have them? I mean, are you talking about the sumps like in the pool for the main drains, or just like a sump pit in the equipment area to drain out any water that may get into the, into the equipment area?
Yep, exactly. So it's like building a basement. I don't know. Do you guys have basements in California?
We don't. I mean, it'd be really rare. I mean, most of what we deal with is we deal with a lot of. I mean, there are basements in one area of, especially like where I do some work in Newport Beach. They can't build above a certain height because of the ocean view. So they do technically basements, but they're more, living spaces. But that's pretty unusual. Most of the times, most of our houses are built on slabs on grade. So yeah, we're kind of unfamiliar with basements. I'm sure some of our listeners are in different parts of the country, like the Northeast or the East or the Midwest, and they're really familiar with it. But there's a whole segment of people out here in the southern part that never probably have been in a basement before.
Right. Well, here in Canada, we got a lot of basements. They're generally the same thing. They're living spaces. It's just another floor, another level if you want. And, excuse me, so in certain areas, or in most areas, you're going to have sump pits. And what that does is it takes away the groundwater around the foundation of the pool, and it basically pipes it through the wall and into these sump pits. And then you've got a sump pump that takes that water and shoots it out to the street or wherever it's going to go, into the swale, wherever you've got it, and gets rid of that water. Otherwise, in some cases, if they're badly built, then your basement leaks. Basically, it comes out through the form and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to get your hands dirty with Ask the Masters? Save the date, February 27th and 28th, 2020.
Okay. So going back to kind of after you pour the floor, you got to create a connection point between the floor and the wall. Kind of explain that process, what you do as far as, your water stops and what you use, and how do you leave the connection point rough like you would with shotcrete, or you just leave it smooth and your water stop goes in there, or how's that process work?
Well, okay, so the connection, you're going to have that cold joint, obviously, between the floor and the wall, and generally what you'd have is a key joint in there, and then you'd have a water stop that sits into that key joint. So as you're pouring your wall down, that just fills in the void there, and then any water migration through the cold joint itself will hit the expandable water stop and basically just seal it. We use a Sika brand that sits in to that. It just basically it rolls out and it sits into the key joint there, and then it's just like an expandable rubber. It's just once it hits water, it expands and it seals that joint. So now you've got a watertight vessel in between that cold joint, the floor and the wall. And then you can also use
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so then you can also use that for your penetrations too. We use either PVC, or we can use an expandable water stop around the joints, and we sleeve through the walls so that those sleeves are already embedded in the wall itself. So everything's in place, and then once we pour our walls, obviously our steel structure is all in place there. Everything is tied off, and it's very easy. I mean, we do a lot of pours. We do multiple pours on our jobs. Average maybe 70 to 80 meters a pour. we don't need many guys, which is great because all the forming work's already done. All your heavy lifting labor, all that kind of stuff has already been done. So it's more just getting the pump in, pouring the walls, floating the top. The base slab is the only thing, and that's basically a mask. It's just mass concrete that we float level. So there's not a lot of. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, when you're pouring the walls, going back to that, obviously you use a vibrator to, vibrate the concrete in there. I'm sure that leaves like a smooth surface. How do you, for your finishes that go on the concrete surface, do you scarify them or do they turn out, rough enough from the form where you don't have to worry about that?
No, we grind all our walls down. So we do scarify them, and then we'll do we'll work with the waterproofing, right against the concrete. We've got waterproofing against the concrete, and then we work our way out. If we're doing tiling, it depends on what we're doing, really. I mean, if we're doing a pebble tech, then with a tile border, then we do that, and then we've got our bond coat right there. Now pebble tech, which we use quite a bit up here, they used to use. Can I say brand names on?
Yeah, that's fine. Not a problem.
They used to use Basecrete, so it was rough enough so it would act as their bond coat. So it was a two-part. One would be the waterproofing, and the other side would be the bond coat to attach to.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
basically, yes, we do grind the walls down. To answer your question there. Yeah.
Okay, do you use any integral waterproofing in the concrete, or you just rely on like a membrane like Basecrete?
We do rely on the membrane. I am not opposed to doing integral. I just worry about the combination between the two, and if there would be any delamination between the two. I know there's been talk about it back and forth and certain things, and I think there are different products out there that work well with each other and some that don't. So
right.
Yeah. But most of the time, it's just.
We've had that discussion before, on the podcast, and you really got to be careful about if you use an integral waterproof water dampening product. You got to make sure your membrane is compatible with it. So that's a great point.
Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts, and there's so much information that you guys give out there, which is just amazing. I love it, and I hope it just continues on and on.
Because that's what we got
I'm
here.
learning every day as well.
Yeah, well, that's where we got you on this one, because not a lot of guys do cast and place. So on going back to the walls and some of the waterproofing aspects. Do you obviously on the outside, on the dirt side of the wall, you use some kind of waterproofing or water dampening product? What's the protocol on the outside of the wall that you guys do?
On the outside, we build it much like a basement. We do tar the outside, and then we put a corrugated membrane that allows the water to drain down in behind the wall, and then right down to basically the base where we've got our weeping tile, which runs in a bed of gravel, and that runs right around the whole structure, and then that ties right into our sump pits. So from there, then the water gets taken away. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Now, let's go into the your equipment vaults a little bit. Some of the pictures I've seen that you do, they're really spectacular, to be honest with you. Rarely do you ever see, some of the stuff you do here in the States, or at least for, in the southern parts. So kind of get into that, and how do you lay them out? Do you use like a CAD system, or do you just, based off your experience, you just know where everything goes? And because they really look super neat and clean, and kind of get into the vault and how you set that up.
You know what, I do some of it, a little bit of it on Pool Studio, just to get the placement of the, just to see the placement of the piping and that kind of thing. We do a lot of it on paper, actually. I don't do CAD. I'd like to learn CAD, but we do a lot of it on grid paper, and we basically break it down into wall sections. So with our lighting, we sleeve through. We have, even though it's a 2D view, we do a 3D view on paper. of the penetrations, the size of the piping, that kind of thing, and then we can sleeve through the walls, the floor, and kind of set up the equipment room that way. The one that we're on in the summertime right now, it's pretty big. Actually, the equipment room is actually huge. The customer wanted lots of storage space, so we're about 15 to 1,600 square feet down there, minus the spa.
Wow, that's bigger than a lot of houses.
yeah, exactly. It's a whole other room down there. So, and we've had a lot of room to put our equipment. We've got our balance tanks that run into that. We've got hatches that we can access everything. And then running the plumbing is great. Other than the penetrations going through the walls and into the concrete, we can pretty much access all our plumbing that way too as well. So if by chance we had any breakdown, or if there was a freeze-thaw, frost that cracked a pipe, we can access that without having to dig anything up, and be able to fix that within a matter of a couple hours or whatever. So that's the beauty of it, and it's also frost-free. So in our climate, we get a lot of frost, and we get a lot of heaving. So we try and incorporate the bunker with the decks in that kind of a style. And then if they've got other things like outdoor cabanas and that kind of stuff that we can sleeve up through, then all of our equipment is hidden away and all of our penetrations are coming up into the areas that need to be, like the kitchen area or the wall areas for the ceiling and that kind of stuff. And then we can hide a lot of stuff, which is great too as well.
Right. Are those equipment vaults, are they heated or year-round, or are they just, you don't put a heater in there?
Not generally. Generally, well, we do insulate them, and if we've got stuff that's running year-round, if the pool's not closed down, or if we've got a spa that's running, the heat from the heater and the pump can keep it at above temperature anyway. If need be, we do heat them. If we have to, we can put in either space heaters or proper heating, proper electrical heating in there, that kind of thing. But generally, they're pretty good. Once you get beyond 4 feet, you're into ambient temperatures in Canada, which is around 55 degrees.
Right. Yeah. So, so I know once you go below a certain depth in dirt, you're kind of you reach a point where it doesn't really get that cold. What do you use for chemical systems? Do you install those in the vault, or what do you guys generally do for that?
Well, depending on the price. The one that I was just describing that we're working on, we've got full Pentair automation. We've got the Telecenter that just came out this year in Canada, so we're trying that out on this one, and we've got Clearwater Ozone. We've got their system on it too as well. Yeah, so we're incorporating that with the full automation. We've got IntelliChem, so we're dosing it with chlorine, and then we've got CO2 adjustment for the acid.
Oh wow! So. You gotta vent out your vault. How do you generally vent out your vault? Is it just like you figure out, a fan, or is there a vent coming out of the deck somewhere, or how do you move air out of that thing?
Well, we're elevated above, so above the ground. So we've got our penetrations coming out the sidewall of the bunker. So
gotcha.
On the far side of the house there, most of the penetrations are behind the kitchen area, which we've got a wall there. And then we've got washroom and change room behind that. So, so it's well hidden, or it's hidden enough anyway, but pretty much the way you'd be venting out of your basement in Canada with all your piping and that kind of stuff for your furnace, your heating, your air conditioning, all that kind of thing that comes out of that. So.
Right. So, you're talking about you use a lot of Pebble Tech up there, or a Pebble system. Is that the majority of the concrete pools that get up there, or do you do any kind of plaster work, or just regular plaster?
No, they've still got plaster. They've still got SGM is big up here. Pebble Tech came in about 5 years ago, and Peter Van Bakris and Gene Brown, they kind of brought it into Canada. I started using it. I've known Pete for a while, through Genesis actually, and Gene on the West Coast I've known not as well, but met him through Genesis as well. But yeah, we use their product and it's amazing. Yeah, love it.
Right. No, awesome. So for your area, I know sometimes people do different building practices because some things aren't available. Is there a reason in particular why you guys use cast in place, or you're more geared towards that versus shotcrete?
I think honestly, me personally, and I don't think we've got the quality that you guys have in the States as far as the guys that are operating the hoses and that kind of thing. At least with cast in place, we keep it in-house. So all of our stuff is done in-house, and we can control it that way. It doesn't go beyond that. And then with our steel placement, we can get everything exact. We know what we're doing. Edge detail is great, especially with cast in place. We can get everything. Exact tolerances are amazing. If we were doing, we do all tile pools as well. So we get very, very close with our tolerances that way too. I mean, you still need to float things out a little bit, but other than that, everything's pretty exact. And to get another company to trust another company to come in and do that, now we're starting to lose that control. And I believe, at least with the cast in place, we don't need a huge crew either. I mean, with the amount of guys that some of the companies that they come in and use, I mean, we can get away with, half a dozen or less guys on a job.
Right. Yeah. Great. I mean, that is one thing I've heard. Like Gene Brown, I've heard him talk about, the nice thing about cast in place, especially with edge pools or overflow pools, is you can be really exact with everything down to the 16th of an inch practically, and that is the downside of shotcrete is when you're shooting overflow pools, or although we do a lot of form work, even with shotcrete, even if we're doing a negative edge pool, or if we're doing a perimeter overflow pool, I'll do it in 2 or 3 different shots just because there's just no way you can properly shoot a pool that has a lot of detail in it in one day. So, but that is the nice thing about cast in place, is that you can use you can get down to the millimeter, I guess you could say. That'd be the advantage of it. So, and plus when you're vibrating that concrete, you're really getting you're starting off, with a kind of, your first step of I always say the first step of a watertight shell is, the concrete. So, when you got it nicely formed and you're vibrating it, I'm sure it's a pretty tight matrix, that you guys do. So. Yeah.
Your consolidation is pretty much 100%. Like, I mean, and then, you don't get the shadowing you would if the steel's not placed properly, or if you don't have your lap splices, that kind of thing. So definitely with cast in place, you're consolidating that all the way around everything. Your pipe penetrations, your steel, all that kind of thing. And that, you're absolutely right. That's the great part of it. And then from there we grind everything back, to a 3 or a 5 CPS or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Every pebble in your pool has a story. Come find that story with Ask the Masters on February 27th and 28th, Mesa, Arizona.
Well, we all know concrete shrinks. So how do you deal with some of your shrinkage cracks that you get in your cast in place walls?
Well, we grind them out and we fill them. If they're really bad, we try not to get too much in the way of shrinkage cracks, but everybody does. And then we fill them, and then we've got our membrane that goes over top of that.
Right, gotcha. Now, just a real quick question for you on the connection point between the wall and the floor. I've seen this before, and maybe the guys just didn't do the cast in place correctly. But is there any fear of like the plaster cracking right at that corner? Have you ever had that problem, or what do you guys do to remediate that problem? If it happens, or how do you prevent it from happening?
Well, it depends on even the wall sections too as well. I mean, if you've got a long wall, you're susceptible to that wall bending to a certain point. And whether you have support behind it, like buckouts or what you're going to be doing to support that wall. A freestanding wall is strong, but it will flex and it will bend and it can move. So definitely supports behind it. buckouts and that kind of thing, depending on the span of the wall. Other than that, I mean, the floor in the wall, we also fill the pool. So we don't fill it with gravel. We actually fill it with concrete all the way up. And we form the floor, the walls, the stairs, everything like that. So if we formed it with gravel and compacted the crap out of that thing all the way up, the amount of time it takes to do that and the possibility that you could get the floor to even move a fraction is not worth it. And what we pay for concrete up there, because we're pouring so much, it just makes more sense, time over dollars, to just fill it up with concrete.
Wow, that's now is the concrete like a slurry, or is it just full on like pea gravel or 3/4 rock that you guys do on that application?
No, it's the concrete is actually it's all it's minimum 4640 psi, which is 32 MPa up here. That's what we pour it at. Some of the jobs we pour 35, but that's our minimum, and that's what we use on basically everything. If it was something other, not structural, we might use a lesser strength. But other than that, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Now going back to kind of the sump pits, I mean, how active are those sump pumps? I mean, do you get a lot of water drainage that happens, or just every once in a while the pump kicks on?
It just depends on the area. So, I mean, if we've got, if the area is quite saturated or that kind of thing, then yes, the sump pits will be kicking on more often, just like a basement too as well. In some areas, like in some of the areas around Toronto and that kind of thing, where you're into sand and that kind of thing, they don't put sump pits in at all. Everything just basically drains right down. But when you're into clay areas and that kind of stuff, you'll get a certain amount of water around the foundation, and once it builds up, then it collects in the weeping tile and then straight into the pit, and then we just basically evacuate it right out to the street or to the swales, wherever it goes. Right.
One quick question. We were kind of talking about tile before. Do you guys just do a lot of porcelain tile application? Have you worked with glass? I mean, with the temperature differential up there, you got to be really careful with the materials you work with. What do you guys pretty much use up there in Toronto?
Porcelain, definitely, just because it's cheaper. Glass, actually, we're going to be doing a glass tile, light stream glass tile on a project that we're doing right now that will be on the outside and partially on the inside. And it's just the way it's applied. And the more we learn through the industry, the more I've learned through the industry, and definitely Genesis and going, going forward is the applications, the ideas and the applications change so much. Right. So, I'm trying to do the best possible. We do get delamination on certain things if it's not applied right. But other than that, we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that we've got, 100% of a product that we can give our customers.
Well, going back to Plaster, like you guys shut down do most of the pools shut down, or do you keep them open, year round? On your concrete.
Most of them do shut down. If we're doing something like an edge detail or something like that, that's, you've got the visual that, if we can incorporate boiler systems, say in the house, if the clients are on a boiler system, then we can pretty much keep that pool 4 or 5 degrees above freezing, and they can enjoy it all year round. We've got some pools out there that run all year round and are great, fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of going back to the heating real quick, and do you guys do any geothermal stuff up there, or have you done any of that geothermal systems?
There is guys around that do it. I personally haven't. It's, unless you're building a new house, it can get expensive. Your return is about 20 years on the product. Okay. So it's something that, we haven't dealt with companies that are doing it at this point, but definitely it is around and it's great. But I would think more to the new housing, that kind of stuff. A lot of people do the boiler system, And and then if we can tie into that, that's great too as well. It's amazing.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Chris, I got to tell you, I've learned a lot just in the last 30 minutes from you, and this is what we're all about here on Ask the Masters. And I knew I do a certain amount of cast in place, but it's typically just for like walls or decorative walls and things like that, or retaining walls. So to actually kind of learn the process about how you do a pool is, I think I learned a lot today myself. So really appreciate you coming on here, spending some time with us. And, I'm glad that you enjoyed the podcast and listened to it. That's why we're here, is to educate everybody. And I can guarantee you yourself educated a lot of people today.
Well, same as, and I enjoy listening to the podcast and you guys. And, it's a learning experience for all of us. We won't stop. And it's amazing what you guys are doing, and going forward with everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on. And I hope to see you here next year at the show.
Definitely. Absolutely, buddy. Yeah, you too.
Okay.
We'll go
right,
for some more drinks. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Grant.
Will do.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Ask the Masters podcast, and don't forget to check out our Facebook page each week on Tuesdays for new episodes of the show. I also want to encourage you to stop by the Ask the Masters Facebook page and invite other like-minded individuals to join us there as well. Feel free to jump into the conversations and even post your own questions. We want to create a community which fosters learning and discovery for the betterment of us all. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Please be sure to subscribe and feel free to share.